Hey, so good to be back. I hope you guys had a great Christmas, a great holiday weekend. Are you ready to start the new year? Are you ready to see what 2023 is going to bring you? Do you have good feelings about it, or are you nervous about it? I'd love to know how you're feeling about 2023. I feel shocked. Wow, I remember, now I'm dating myself, I remember when we were thinking about the turnover of the year 2000. Talk about hysteria. You'd think we acted like the world was going to end. There was this idea that there was a bug in the computers that they couldn't somehow note the new year because we always used the last two digits of a number when we wrote a date. Like if I wrote my birthday, I would write the last two. Instead of writing 19 whatever, I would just write the year. My kids were born in the 90s and I was born in the 60s. We'd just write that year. So the idea was that they didn't have four digits for all 4 years, and there was going to be this big kind of computer collapse. And survivalist was actually storing food. It was wild. And I just remember people like talking about the end of the world. Yeah, exactly. The Y2K bug. Exactly. And then it, the new year arrived and everything kept moving on and everything was easy. And it was amazing. It's funny. Hey, from UK. So good to see you. Well, I'm so glad you guys are joining me here today. I thought I'd talk about, this is one topic I thought I'd talk about. I first want to let you know what's going to be happening in the new year because I'm making some changes. So I want to describe those changes so that you have a better sense of it. But I also have been hearing a lot from you, actually. A lot of you are contacting me talking about the oddity of toxic people's inability to register what they did and really feel remorse and guilt. And yeah, our lives are sort of gutted and we're hurt and we don't know what to make sense of it. And it seems like this time of year brings a lot of those feelings up. I don't know if it's because we're more likely to have contact with these individuals or because it's the time where we tend to think of connectedness, so it brings these feelings up for us, or maybe it's for other reasons. Maybe because you see people that you normally don't see, so you're more aware of what you don't have and you're feeling the loss more intimately. I don't know why, but I'm hearing from a lot of you. A lot of you are contacting me. I'm like 10 people plus a day, and for me it's not a lot in the whole scheme of things, but it's a lot. So I'm hearing there's a lot of feelings. I guess that's the best way to talk about it. A lot of feelings. So let me introduce myself. I'm a psychologist, Dr. Carrie Kerr McAvoy. I have over 20 years of counseling experience these days. I primarily educate, increase awareness of relationship issues, mental health issues, but also narcissism and personality disorders. And I'm so excited that you're here with me today and I want to interact with you. So please, if you're here, especially for those of you who don't know, sorry, I want to turn off that sound. In order for us to interact so that I know that you're talking to me, please put a thumbs up in front of your comment, like you just saw on TikTok, Sarah just did. That way, and same with Instagram. That way I know I'm live on both platforms, by the way. That way that I know that you're talking to me and not just talking to each other, because there's a lot of great conversation here we have because we build community. On this page, we build a lot of community. So I'm super excited that you're here. I'm super excited to meet you, to hang out with you. But I'd like to know, so that's one thing I've been thinking about is the emotionality of how do you heal when there is no accountability and no recognition of the damage done to us and to our lives and to our children. That's one thing I've been hearing a lot from you about, so I'd be open to talking about that. But I'm willing to take your questions, whatever your questions are. And I just want to give you a couple ideas about what to expect from me. One, we don't talk about religion and politics, not because those things aren't wonderful things to talk about, but just because it tends to get confusing and messy here. And this is primarily a mental health page where we're talking about mental health issues. The other thing is, let's not talk about my appearance. I know trolls like to come on and just stir stuff up. So I appreciate hearing, that, but let's just save those comments for something else somewhere else. So I appreciate that. So how are you doing? Let me check. Well, you know what? While I'm checking in and having you guys, start to put your questions in the comment, let me tell you what I'm going to be doing for 2023. I have something I'm excited about and I'm a little nervous about. I want to use these lives in a different way because I've been primarily coming here and just educating, which is really great. But sometimes that there's two ways of approaching healing. There is a top-down, which is where we talk to our thinking part of our brain and hopes that it heals the deeper part, the part that feels scared, shaky, emotional, out of control. That's called top-down treatment. And then there's treatment that's called bottom-up, and that's where you speak to the out of control, the viscerally unsafe part of you. If you guys have listened to Body Keeps a Score, you'll recognize that term as something that Dr. Van der Kolk talks about in his book, where we need to learn how to re-regulate ourselves after experiencing trauma. So I have this idea. And at first it would be open to the public. And then as starts to get busier, I will continue to keep it open to the public on a more sporadic basis, but it will be more of a subscriber or member only experience. So we'll do it live. So on YouTube, on TikTok, you have the ability to do multi guests. So my thought is to bring up to like 4 or 5 of you on, and all of you who are watching can do this together. We'll do this together, an experience of regulated, controlled, affective and somatic experiences where we work on deep breathing, we work on body awareness, we work on identification of emotions. Maybe we'll do other techniques that have to do with healing, like we might talk about different kinds of grounding ourselves. So what I would do is do this live with you. It would be a guided exercise, and it would be based on signups. And it wouldn't be, I go live twice a week. It wouldn't be each live, but it would be one of the lives. We would dedicate it to an experience where we work together, do this together. You know how you see on TikTok and on Instagram where people come and they do like help you sleep, or they do other kind of experiential things. They actually lead you through an experience. So I want to do that. That's what I'd like to do. I'd like to lead you through experiences once a week. And this would be, I would want you to sign up. Now, for those who come on, I know that it takes really brave souls to come on here and do this with me in front of everybody. But I also would want all the audience. I'm hoping the audience would participate as well, and we would do this together. So that's one big change that I'm working on. I'm also, somatic healing. I'm looking for a good title, guys. So if any of you have a kind of a nice, catchy phrase for that, I've been doing some brainstorming because I want to call it something. So right now I don't have the sign up yet, but I will work on having that signed up, and I'm thinking about starting it in a couple weeks, and I'll make sure that you know. So watch for the links for this so that you can be one of the ones, if you're interested in doing it, that you can sign up. So you know what day. I'll make sure to communicate with you and text you or email you ahead just before we do it, so you know, and we'll talk about the logistics about how to go live on TikTok and all of that stuff. So that's one big change. The other change is I'm making to my YouTube channel, which I'm super excited about it. I don't know if you guys were aware. I have a YouTube channel, and on this channel, I've primarily just TikTok's been my primary platform. This is where I put the biggest focus. But this new year, it's going to be YouTube. And I'm launching a new series called, and Booth, I don't know what's going wrong. Is everybody having problems with sound on Instagram? Please let me know on Instagram if you're having problems with sound, or if it's just something unique to a couple people's devices. It might be your device. But on YouTube, I'm launching a new series called Toxic Love. It's a year-long series, and it's going to be longer content. So Seth, do you mean no, you can't hear me? Or you mean no, you have, oh, no problems. Okay, you have no problems. All right, okay, great. Thank you guys. Interestingly, we just asked a poll over on TikTok, what are you struggling with? 12% of you are having a hard time leaving abuse. 37% of you is trying to break a trauma bond, and 50% of you is trying to heal. So yeah, I have been aware that my primary platform here on TikTok has been those of you who are healing. Most of you are in the healing. And I have content for those of you who are having a hard time leaving and breaking a trauma bond. Please get a hold of me, because I've got a course, and I also know coaches are really, really good at that. So yeah, my address on YouTube is really easy. By the way, you can find it. I don't know if you guys know that. You can find it by going to the link in the profile. It says Instagram sign. If you push it, it says Instagram and YouTube. Both is right there. But YouTube has gone to something really convenient, where if you put in the handle, my handle's the same, Carrie McAvoy PhD, you can find me right away. So I'm about ready to launch this new series. It's going to be longer content, 8+ minute content, breaking down all the parts and components of a toxic relationship from start to finish, all the way. So the first one is going to be the week of the 9th is going to be the first one. And it is, how do you spot a narcissist when you walk in a room? That's what we're going to start. We're going to start with, you walk in a room, what are we missing when we get into a room that we're not seeing that identifies potentially, now not perfectly, but potentially narcissistic people? And then I'll take it all the way by the end of 2023. We'll get into healing, the roles of healing, all of that will be, so we'll start all the way from when you walk into a room before you meet them to what happens when you get into a relationship, what's going on in the relationship, why is the relationship so hard to leave, all the parts and components of it, what's the makeup of a narcissist, what's the makeup of the victim, what happens when we do leave, why is there financial abuse, reactive, all of it. We're going to literally take it apart, a toxic relationship, from start to all the way to the healing and the finish. So I'm super excited about that. That starts it's going to be start on January 9th. And then the other big thing that's going to start happening on YouTube, I haven't been going live over there, so I'm going to be going live. My YouTube channel, by the way, is Carrie McAvoy, PhD. The handles have changed. It's no longer that whole string of gobbledygook. I don't know why YouTube did it, but you can put youtube.com, I think it's / or / or whatever, Carrie McAvoy, PhD is how you find me. And it's if you click on the Instagram link, guys, in TikTok, you'll find it. It's also there. So those are the two big changes. Is going to be a somatic kind of affective somatic healing experiences we're going to do together, experientially together, and then that will start once a week on the lives, and you'll be sign-ups for those of you who wants to go live with me on a multi-guest way. And then we're going to be on YouTube. It's going to be this longer, big content series. And then the other changes is I'm making changes to the podcast. I don't know if you guys know that, but I just closed season 1. I'm super excited about it. It went really well. So for those of you who want to hear shortened, the best version of the lives, the gut of the lives, that's a great way to go find it. It's all 69 episodes. It's been since April. I've been putting them up since April. So it gives you a nice kind of breakdown of all the parts and pieces and components. So if you want to listen to longer content, check out, it's called Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. One more ad, then I'll stop and we'll start talking about you guys. Please put your comments in. You guys have been listening. You've not really been letting me know what you want to talk about today. And somebody keeps telling me on Instagram, I need help. You got to say what you need help with. I can't help, I need to know what it is that you need help with. So please say more if you want help, and make sure to put a thumbs up so I know that you're talking to me. Finally, for those of you who know Trey, I was like, yo, Trey, he and I have been doing group coaching, and we're midpoint through the first skill building coaching. So if you're a person who struggles with you're in or leaving or out of the relationship and you can't stop thinking about this person, and you can't stop reviewing what happened, and you can't stop feeling better and getting over all of that, you just feel stuck in there, we're doing skill building, group coaching, and the new one's starting on Saturday, January 7th. Saturday's January 7th is the next 6 sessions. It's live. It's you go Zoom call. There's 2 spots left. That's it. 2 spots left. 6 weeks. It's 12 weeks. It's 6 sessions. It's every other week. So it would start in January and it would end in March. It would be 6 every other week, it would occur. We're right now midpoint. It's been fantastic. We actually give practical steps. You get exercises. It's not going to be something where you come and talk about what's happening. It's where you come and talk about where you're at and why the exercises are working or not working. It's really learning. It's a learning experience, a skill building experience. A lot of us walk out of these relationships, we feel undone. We just feel really broken and in pieces, and we don't know how to even soothe ourselves, and we don't know what to do with our feelings, and we don't know what to do with the fact that we have no closure and we're grieving. Well, that's a great place to learn those skills. That's the point of it, to learn those skills. If you're interested, it's in the link in my bio. It's about midway down in my bio. And I still have Christmas specials. Oh, one more thing. Lundy Bancroft. How many of you guys know Lundy Bancroft? You guys familiar with his work? He's written a lot of stuff. For me, I found him right after I left that toxic relationship, and I was in pieces. I'm a psychologist, but they don't teach a lot about abuse in graduate school. They focus more in graduate school for psychology about how to do therapy, theory of self, all of that. They don't get into these specialty areas, and abuse and trauma, unfortunately, I hate to tell you, is a specialty area. So I didn't really have a lot of answers. I didn't even really recognize I was being abused. How many of you can relate to that? Here I am. Like I said, I'm a psychologist, and I don't know that I'm being horrifically emotionally abused. And I'm sure many of you don't know that either when you've been in the middle. It's only as you're coming out of it or after it's over, you look back and think, wow, I was minimized and invalidated, and that person really ran me down, and there was so much Darvo going on and so much gaslighting, and that's all abuse. That's all very severe abuse. So Lundy Bancroft wrote a book called Why Does He Do That? And it's specific to gender because he studied criminal minds. That's why he's focusing on men. He went to a prison and he studied something like 2,000 criminal inmates and abusive men. He was looking at angry, violent men. And then he did all this big analysis of the angry man, the angry and controlling man. I'm interviewing him February 9th from 12:30 to 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Right now, the tickets are $30. That's going to go up in the new year. It's going to go to $35. So if you want to go to that, even if you don't know if you can make the event, buy the ticket because you'll get the free replay, and the free replay will even be more expensive. So the replay won't be free. The replay after the event is going to be $40 to get that replay. But right now you can get a ticket, and it means you get a replay for $30. So if you think that that's going to be interesting and helpful, please make sure you get in on it now before the prices go up in the new year. Okay, so there have been some questions that have been coming in. And so I'm going to go back and start taking that. And that event is a live webinar on February 9th from 12:30 to 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Like I said, even if you can't make it, say that you're at work and it's the wrong time zone for you, please go ahead and get the ticket because you're going to get the replay. And we professionally edit these replays, by the way. It is not just a Zoom taping that we then put out. I have a team that works with me, and we're going to take that week after the event's over and edit it and make sure that it's put together really nicely, and it will not be available for free. It will not be. It will be available for purchase. So make sure that if you're interested and you want to get the best price is right now. All right. Thank you so much for letting me. I lost half my crowd on TikTok. She's talking too much about advertisement. Anyway, so I'm super excited about launching the experiential, somatic, I don't want to call it therapy. I'm a psychologist, but I'm not treating here, but I do want to help us tap into our sense of self. I want to give you skills that you could go home with, that you could do by yourself, that you can begin to work on this progressively and begin to heal. So I really would love to know what you think. DM me. You can let me know here. And by the way, please tap on your screen, like this, share this, so that we can get a better audience in here today. Okay, so let's start dealing with your questions. And I'm going to go back to the top of TikTok and go back there. And I'm going to jump back and forth between Instagram and TikTok. So Sarah asked me, why do they do what they do and then have no accountability? So is that a big question? A lot of you wonder, why is there no accountability? Have you noticed that? Somebody this morning was somebody that I think she may be in our group coaching, was texting me this morning about this odd, how you see them say, and even mine did this too. I was married. My last one I was married to a narcissist. I was married twice. My first husband died, and then I married again, and I married a narcissistic sociopath. It was horrific. Never laid a hand on me, never called me a name, but when it came to psychological warfare, I swear the guy was masterful at it. Really had nailed it down well. Yeah. So, but he did this too. He would say things like, I know I'm broken. I know that I'm damaging, but you're just going to have to accept me this way. You're going to have to decide if you can live like this. That's what he would put it out on me. He would make me be the bad guy because I wasn't accepting of the way he was. And the person who was writing me this morning was sharing how this person was even religious, and they would say, I know that what I've done is wrong, but I can't help myself. And they would make these kind of general sort of like swooping statements that sound almost like an apology, kind of like an edge of it. Like, I know there's something wrong with me, but then they wouldn't actually go to the slowing down and making eye contact with you or whoever is hurting and saying, and this is what I've done to you, and this has been the cost to you. They would never take it that step. I bet you a lot of you can relate. I bet you this is something that you guys have really struggled with. So why do they do that? Have you wondered why do they do that? Well, it's this odd thing of the way that they're handling their own internal. Well, there's a couple reasons. One is neurologically, there's an area of our brain that really gets active when we feel regret, remorse, and responsibility. And it's been shown in imaging that this area of the brain for narcissistic individuals and other toxic kind of people actually is under affected. It's not much blood flow. There's not much going on in that area. So it's just not activated. So they don't feel it in the way that you and I feel it. So there's problem number one. Does that then make it an excuse for them? No, because maybe they don't have emotional empathy. That doesn't mean you can't learn cognitive empathy. That was another interesting thing. A psychopath got a hold of me, female psychopath on one of these platforms, and said, in fact, she kind of poked fun at me. It was a little cruel, and came back and said, yeah, that was cruel. I shouldn't have said that. And then had said, I am a psychopath and I work on cognitive empathy. I'm working on putting myself in your shoes and imagining what life would feel like. See, that's all cognitive. It's all thinking. Imagining whether or not I would like that. And if I wouldn't like it, then I think to myself, oh, then I shouldn't do it. And this person said, this is what I'm working on and trying to get better at. And I apologize. I shouldn't have said that to you. So it is possible to work around these deficits. It is possible. Yeah, the question comes in kind of tying into this. Is this neurological difference, is it due to damage or is it actually done by learned behavior like habit? Well, there's that hard part. And we don't know that. You can't really look at an undeveloped brain. That's the problem. When infants are come out, their brains, this was fascinating. I just heard this in the book, The Body Keeps a Score. Humans are probably the most fragile mammal born on the earth because we have such large brains that they come out really immature. You can't give birth to a fully mature brain. It's too large. So we give birth to a brain that is still growing and has a lot of growth. And in fact, they've found that we're continuing to make connections and the brain's continuing to maturate all the way into the mid-late 20s. That's how long it takes for our brain to finish developing. It's all the way into our far 20s. So when did this happen? When did these changes show up? It's right now the idea, it's called etiology whenever you want to know what is the root cause of something. The etiology, the belief of what's going on with narcissism is that it is due to, I'm sorry, I'm reading a comment over here. Can we talk a bit? If we can talk a bit before I'm willing to live my healing. Oh, okay. Anyway, sorry about that. So the idea is it's a biosocial connection. They think that they're showing strong genetic connections to narcissism. Narcissism tends to run in twins, identical twins, about 70% of the time. But there's a social component. There's something that happens. In other words, it's not if it was just genetics, it would be 100%. Then regardless of what happens in your life, if you guys are identical, then you both would be narcissistic. Well, that's not happening. It's only 70% of the time. That means out of every 10 children, 7 identical twin sets, both are narcissistic, but 3 of them are not. So why are the 3 not? Well, we don't really know why. We think that there's something that happens in the maturation of that brain. Now, it would be easy for you to say, oh, it's failed parenting. Something went wrong with mom and dad, and that's why there is a problem. Well, it's not that simple. It's not just simply because of abuse or trauma, or it could be that there was family dynamics that were going on. It could be from the fragility of that person's own ego strength and their inability to handle a normal situation. It could be that somebody in the family fell ill, and then there was all this stress around that. It could be there was unemployment. It could be they're born into a situation in which there was enormous economic stress or a lot of like cultural stress. So we don't really know, but we do know that this comes from another research, is that a percentage of people who have intellectual deficits, it's not really related to anything that's wrong with this person. What it's related to is a lack of certain kind of environmental exposure and stimulation. That what happens to us environmentally in our culture and our exposure, our opportunities, affects development, affects growth. So it could be for a lot of reasons, and we don't really exactly know why narcissism happens, but we know it's a biosocial cause. That's what we know. So it's not, you can't say, oh, it's because they have trauma. They've controlled for that, by the way. They actually taken studies of subjects and control people and compared them, those who were just traumatized versus those who had narcissistic history. They find there really actually isn't a consistent connection between those two. So it's not because of trauma, although they sure like to say that. And the reason they do that, which is back to where I started, is because it connects with the rest of us, those of us who have empathy, and we hear these horrible stories. It makes us feel bad for them, and then we start to underwrite or off-write what they do. We then don't hold them responsible. So yes, it really reaches us, but they're using it kind of as a manipulation. It is a manipulation, so be careful about that. So why back then so that's one reason, Sarah, is that they just are wired differently and they don't feel the same kind of experience of guilt. Now, another reason why narcissists and other toxic people are not apologetic and do not see our pain is because they don't have the wherewithal to deal with it. They don't have the ego structure to kind of compensate for it, to know how to make because of shame. Their big avoidance is this experience of shame and disappointment, and they don't have the ego structure to deal with it very well. So what they do then is they offload it onto you. They then lean into you, which is what David Snarf calls borrowed functioning. They lean into you for the help. They want you to take the responsibility, so they take no responsibility. They're essentially children in grown-up bodies in a lot of ways. Emotionally, they are essentially children who are looking to those around them to offset all the things that they have not learned how to psychologically manage. And that includes a lot. That includes not just what they do wrong. That includes all the painful emotions that they don't really have, like anger and loss and feeling embarrassed or struggling with stress. They're also offloading their fact that life isn't turning out the way that they want, or whatever going on in the life. Like for example, when my oldest son was diagnosed with leukemia, my ex split. Now, granted, he was looking for an opening, but he didn't have the same know-how to handle this very complicated, stressful situation of dealing with someone with a very serious illness. So he booked. And a lot of you guys share similar stories about how your partners don't stick around for the tough moments. They don't know how to parent. They don't know how to deal with conflict at work. They don't know how to deal with what's going on with their own in-laws and their own family, but they don't have the maturation or the skill set to show good judgment and good insight and all of this stuff. They just really struggle with that. So those are some reasons. That's a big answer, but the reason I took a long time on that one is because a lot of you have been getting a hold of me about this. Is like, you know what? It's the holidays and this person got a hold of me and they want to reconnect, but they seem totally checked out of what they've done to me and how they've hurt me. And I don't know what to say, but I feel kind of cruel and mean for cutting them off, but I should, because I know, I've been hearing a lot of this from you guys. So thank you for that question. It's a good question. I'm going to go over to Instagram and see if something's come over here. Make sure you guys put a thumbs up so I know that you're talking to me. Zero accountability. I agree. Thank you. I'm glad that I'm to be back. I'm not full up to schedule. Like I said, I'm kind of changing my schedule a bit, guys, on how often I'm posting stuff. Okay, so Carrie Lynn over on Instagram said, how do we heal when the person takes our money and we can't afford coaching? This is a common problem, and I know I hear from you guys a lot about this, that you're struggling with the fact that things cost money. You wish that coaching was free, or that therapy was free, or that even the stuff like this Lundy Bancroft webinar was free. I get that. And I grew up very poor. I did not have, and I had to earn my own money to do most things. So if anything that I wanted that was not like housing or food, after 12, yes, I got clothes for Christmas, but anything extra, and yes, I got maybe a set of clothes when I started school, but if I outgrew them, everything else was on me. And we're talking middle school and high school. I had to find ways of making money. Here's the thing. It's not easy, and I'm not saying it's easy, but I also know that all of us who do this, we're making a living as well. And I know this is the brutal, awful truth, and maybe you're even feeling angry with me saying that. Yeah, I do give you hope. I give you enormous amount of content for free. My YouTube channel, my podcast, all of that is for free. And if you DM me, I often respond for free. I also will usually tell you an opinion or give you some direction. So there's more free content right now than I think there has ever been available because of social media, which is awesome, which is really glad. But these things are really important. Here's what I found. I used to work for community mental health, and the people I was seeing was getting free help. People don't value what they don't pay for. I'm sorry, they don't. I would have people no-show on me or wouldn't do the hard work because they could just come in week after week. When you have to put something out and it costs you something, you value. They've even done studies. They've taken the same product, made it expensive, and then had a same version of it for free and watched what people did with it. We don't treat things the same when we get it for free versus when we have to pay something for it. I suspect there are coaches and there are opportunities for people who will sponsor you, or coaches who would be willing to offer a fee based on, sliding fee scale, that you can find ways around. That's what I did. I always took a couple clients for whatever they could afford. When I would see people for therapy and they had not good insurance, I would say to them, how much can you afford a month? And I would, in my head, figure that I would see them at least twice a month, and I would divide that and see them for that rate. I saw people when I was making like over $100 an hour, like we're talking almost 10 years ago, for $20 a session. I saw them. So it is possible to find it. I know it's rare. I know it's hard. And even here, I'm going to be offering free live experiences where we can come together and work on this together and do some healing experience. So, Carrie Lynn, it's not an easy answer. I know that. I wish it was easy, but I also know that there are ways, like, for example, I know one group, Carolyn, where it's probably $200 a month, and they offer 3 hours a week of coaching. It's group coaching, and that's what I did. I didn't have a lot of money when I first left that narcissist either, and I took advantage of that. And I scrimped everywhere else is what I did. I'm not saying you're buying Starbucks coffee. I'm not saying that, but I scrimped in a lot of other places in order to be able to afford that. It's the choice. Unfortunately, it comes down to the choices that we make. And I know it's not popular, and it is painful. Here's the other problem. Not only do we not value something when we get it for free, but those of us who are doing it, we burn out and we can't keep up. That's the other problem. So it's kind of it's good mental health for both of us. And I wish life was different. I really do. I wish life was easier, and I wish none of us need this help. I really do that. But I do think there are online courses. I think there's, like I said, there's a lot of this that you can find that is available for reduced rates. And a lot of us are willing to help where we can, for sure. We really are. So I'm sorry that you're there and this is what's happening to you in your life. So I'm going to hop over now to TikTok and take the next question. I'm going to go backwards here, guys. I know. Thank you for putting your thumbs up and letting me know that you're speaking to me. And I appreciate the tough questions, by the way. I really do. Okay, I think, Brittany, you're up next. So how do you deal with the judgment and rejection from family? How many of you guys are sitting in that spot where you've set some good boundaries for yourself? Maybe you're going low contact or no contact, and you're getting a lot of shit for it. Yes, I've experienced that, where people don't understand why you're having these new rules, and and you know what? They're going to do the typical thing. Here's the way to think about it. Not only do people struggle with narcissism, but organisms, groups struggle with narcissism. Groups can be toxic. They've done studies at that. So don't just look at how healthy is a person. Consider also how healthy is the group dynamics or the institution or the organization. You can have narcissistic organizations. You can have organizations that behave very much like a borderline. You can have organizations that are very cutthroat, like psychopathic. So consider the fact that organisms can get sick and unhealthy as well. So what happens when you're in an organism that is sick and unwell, and what they do is they'll do this pressure. And so one way to think about this, Brittany, is to think of the judgment and rejection as a please change message, or not even the please part. They're just saying change. You need to change. I don't want to deal with the stuff that you're saying that we should deal with. We're not taking accountability. We're not going to look at getting healthier and dealing with our emotions. We want you to be different and stop putting a pressure on us. And your good boundaries are a reminder that you're telling us that we have a problem. And we don't like that. So we're going to just lay it on hard on you in order to get you to stop so that we can move on and keep being ourselves. That's really what you're hearing. You're hearing it's a sophisticated message of the organism saying, I'm not changing. I don't have a problem. You have the problem, which how many of us recognize that? That's what narcissists do. Toxic people do that. They don't want to take accountability and responsibility. They're going to put the pressure on you. So that's what you're doing with it. So let me ask you, how do you deal with it when it happens with a toxic partner or a toxic friend? Well, we don't own it, right? We remind ourselves that this is coming out of a sick system, and that we also then give ourselves the truth, realizing this is a system that doesn't know how to deal with accountability, responsibility, and emotional sophistication. And then we keep our emotional distance from that setting. So whether it is you emotionally disconnect and detach, or whether you avoid the group altogether, but you find ways in order for you to stay safe by creating distance for yourself. That's what you do. You know what's hard, and this is what's hard, because we like to give simple answers. We like to say, well, just ignore it, Brittany. Why do you letting it bother you? That's your problem. The reason, but here's the thing. It minimizes the degree that we're hardwiring for belonging. So it is painful. It's a loss. You're relinquishing your desire to have a sense of camaraderie and connection with this group of people. And you're saying, I'm going to go it alone instead of being in this community because the community is too sick for me. Yeah, and that's loss. And there's a lot of pain in that. So there is nothing small about this decision. It is a hard decision. And please remember that. Show yourself mercy and grace around that. And when other people come at you and tell you it should be simpler, they don't get it. They're either being too optimistic because they want to fix it because it makes them feel uncomfortable, or they're toxic themselves, so they're out of touch with their feelings and they don't appreciate how painful this is. But don't let anyone tell you this is not a big deal. It is a big deal. Letting go of these systems, these organizations, whether it's our family, it could mean that it's a close group of friends that we grew up with. Maybe it's the community association that you're involved with in your neighborhood. But to give these places up, these things up, it hurts. It's a loss. And there's feelings that go with that. So really give yourself lots of grace for that. Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Okay, so over on Instagram, the next question is, the subject, Katrina, is we're just talking today. I started out telling all the changes coming in 2023, and then now we're talking about whatever it is you would like to talk about. So if you have anything you want to talk about, I would be happy. I don't know if I ever asked, can a narcissist's brain change? That's a question coming up. I think there's some structures that probably are just not going to change. All right, so let's think about the brain for a second. What's the makeup of a brain? A brain is I don't know if you've ever really stopped and asked yourself that. It's got structures inside, and the structures do different things, just like our organs do different things. Different parts of the brain are responsible for different things. So there's cells, the neurons, it's called neurons, the cells, and they, by the way, when they die, yeah, they may regenerate, but it's very slow, like months. And a lot of them don't. So once they're gone, they're gone. That's what's so bad about trauma, brain trauma. Like hemorrhaging and stuff. I don't know if you guys knew that. Did you know blood is toxic to the brain? Yes, the brain never comes in contact with blood. It comes through. It's the glucose comes through the. I don't even know how it works. I just know that when blood comes in contact with neurons, it kills neurons. That's why it's so catastrophic when you have a hemorrhage going on in the brain. Why they really want it stopped, because it's toxic to the brain. So when you lose that, you usually don't get it back. You've lost those cells. But here's the other thing. The cells are structured where they have like long arms and fingers. Think their names are the axons and dendrites. And they grow out. Think of like the old-fashioned telephone wiring. So when you would go in a neighborhood years ago, now it's all underground, or it's being sent electronically through the airwaves, but it used to be you had to be wired up. You'd have hooked up. And so you'd have all this wiring between everybody to communicate or to send like telephone lines or for electricity. Think of the dendrites. Think of the ends of the neurons doing that. They send out all this connection to each other, and they send signals to each other. They're actually excreting chemicals and They work electrically and chemically, sending signals between cells. That's how the brain communicates, is electrically and chemically, and through these long arms, these long tentacles that like wiring. Now, the brain is always growing those. It's always possible to rewire those, and it's fascinating. So if you develop a new habit, it begins to grow the connections in order for you to do that new habit as efficiently, as fast as possible. So if you took up a new instrument and started learning how to play a piano, for example, or a guitar, your brain would begin to grow new pathways to learn how to do that super efficiently. And whatever you stop doing, the habits you stop doing, those connections between each other starts to, because it's not being used, the body just stops maintaining them and they begin to disappear. They start to go away. So it is possible to change the structure of your brain, but you're not growing new cells. You're growing new connections. That part's possible. So come back to the brain of a narcissist. It's different. Is it possible if you have like no empathy, you don't feel a lot of affective empathy, like you watch a Hallmark card and it leaves you cold, or you hear somebody who's telling you about a death in the family and you don't really feel anything at all, can they grow parts of that back? I'm not for sure. I think some of that is maybe a little, but not a lot. And here's the bigger, more important question. They're never going to have a normal brain. So the way that, they're not going to suddenly become really great at gift giving when they don't even think of your birthdays and holidays and they instead throwing a fuss. That's not just, they can maybe stop throwing a fuss, maybe be a little more sensitive, but they're not ever going to be the super compassionate person. The bigger question I have for you is, can you learn to live with the way that they are, even if there's just soft changes, like minimal changes? At least they're not abusive and they're a little more reflective. Is that enough? Because their issue is, the way that this gets expressed is a need for control and a need to be right. That part probably is pretty persistent. I've heard two big experts in this area say, don't hold your breath for a lot of change. Just don't get hopeful on that. They're pretty fixed the way that they are. Most of us are. Most of us are pretty fixed. The way that we are today is the way that we are. So the question is, can you live with this? And is it good for you? And how much damage is it doing to your psyche being in this kind of relationship and situation? Those are the kind of questions that I would ask for myself. Here's part of the other reason why. Because I was coming at it from a neurological standpoint. I'm going to come at it from an emotional standpoint for a second. I'm going to ask, it is like a paradoxical puzzle. The way to profoundly change is I'm thinking now psychologically, the way to profoundly change is you have to become in touch with the degree that you've damaged other people and the way that you're being abusive. That's a lot of shame to face that. Say, for example, that you drove drunk this week and you killed somebody. If you really want to help that family, help the community heal, you would need to own what you did, face it head on, and take full accountability and responsibility that you can never replace that person. That's a lot of weight, psychological weight to bear. But unfortunately, a lot of people who are narcissistic do that kind of psychological damage in other people's lives. You guys may say, what? Really, you're comparing it to a life? Well, let me give you a for instance. I really believe in the ability that two people can come together and trust each other and really be open and safe with each other and share who we are with each other, knowing the other person will never betray that and hold that sacred. That's what I believed. I had a marriage built on it for 31 years that did that. My first husband never cheated on me. I bet you he probably didn't even think of another woman, because that I know him and that was the kind of person he was. And the people who know him knew that was the kind of man he was. He was a man when it came to his commitments. Dead on. Dead on. Nobody would ever tell you my first husband was not like that. If he promised to move you, he said he would show up on Saturday to move you. He would show up throwing up and move you. He was a man of his word. So I get into the second relationship and I find I've married a man who keeps none of his words. His words are just air. He just throws them out like leaves and lets them fall wherever. He does that just to get what he wants. It gutted me. It destroyed something in me. And can I trust like that again? I don't know. Not easily. I do a few people, but not easily. I'm changed by what happened to me. It changed me. It damaged me. That isn't going to go away. I now know that people's capacity for evil in a way that I didn't know, and I don't want to know that, and knowing that has made me different. So somebody that has to heal from narcissism has to look at that, get what they did to you, get what they're doing to their children, to their community, take ownership for that, and begin to be a different person consistently, while at the same time hold space emotionally for all the pain, loss, and rage the rest of us have for what they did. How many people do you know who are narcissists will ever do that? How many people do you know who even do that at all? I don't know many people. So I'm not very hopeful. So I gave you a neurological reason. I also now gave you a psychological. In order for them to be a kind of person that I would want to go forward with, I would want them to do that. I would want them to do the hardest work possible, the work that I would expect out of myself. And by the way, I would do that. If you guys know who I am, you would know I would do that. I would cross fire for you. I would walk on glass for you. But I think most people won't do that. So I'm not very optimistic, Katrina. Not very optimistic. Is it genetic or Pasha girl? You missed the fact that I was saying it was a biosocial reason. That they're narcissistic for biosocial, meaning 70% of it is accounted roughly for genetic because of the identical twin studies showing that. But something activates it, and we don't quite know what activates it. And thank you guys for liking and sharing this. I appreciate that. So I'm now on TikTok looking for the next question here. This is an interesting question asked by Louis Salamamor. I never can say these names. Sorry about that, Lou. I'm probably crucifying your name. Oh, it's probably Lou Salam. I'm sorry. Lou asked, do these studies have any bias since a minority of narcissistic personality disorder cases are diagnosed? Yeah, that is a problem, and that's a problem for even the statistics of how many people are narcissistic. We don't know. We only know based upon those who come in and are seen or evaluated in a psychiatric facility or wherever they're diagnosed. I was going to say ER, but I don't even think an ER would never diagnose you with MPD. You'd have to either be admitted to a hospital, a psychiatric hospital, or see a psychiatrist or a social worker or psychologist. That's the only way to be diagnosed. So if narcissists don't seek help, then how are they being diagnosed? They're not. That's the problem. They're not. So the majority of cases are not being seen. So do these studies that I'm talking about, that's an interesting question, because here's the hard part. How do we measure something when we really can't get a good sample size to even measure it? And then the samples we are measuring are all biased. Like anyone who ever sees treatment in some form, they usually have something catastrophic going on in their life. That's why narcissists come in for therapy, is because something's going wrong. They're in trouble with the law, they're in trouble with work, or they're losing some kind of familial relationship or partnership that for whatever reason they need. And then, of course, for that reason, they're only there as long as the situation is not stable. And the minute it stabilizes, they're back out. I saw plenty of those. I did have a few narcissists do long-term therapy with me. I did see a few do that. But those were the rare group that were self-motivated. They didn't like who they were or how life made them feel, and they really wanted a better life, and that's what caused them to come in and do treatment. So, Lou, it's a complicated question, but there's I think, I don't know, you may be asking a loaded question. In other words, you may be saying, because you're only seeing a tip of the iceberg, in other words, you're seeing a specific segment, could it possibly be that we're making skewed conclusions? Okay, so I want to ask you the question in a different way. All the victims of narcissistic abuse, so if you think about, if we can't actually see the narcissist, but we're seeing all the after effect of narcissism because of all the victims are coming forward and getting help, like they're here and they're getting coaching and they go try to see therapists, or they get hospitalized, or they come in and see their doctors because of all the medical problems. That's reflective of a big problem. Even if the big problem doesn't get help, we're seeing the aftermath of a big problem. Isn't that enough information to tell us that the problem is significant enough that it's causing all of this overflow of problems? Because there's a segment of group of people who want to say that MPD is being stigmatized, that it isn't really actually those who have it are abusive, which I find really odd, because if you go to the DSM-5, and I'm being straight up, I'm not being facetious right now. If you go straight to the DSM-5 and look at all 9 criteria, there's not anything about it that is easy to live with. In fact, that's why they call Cluster B an antagonistic group. They're antagonistic. I don't like living around antagonistic people. That means they purposefully interact everything that goes on in a conflictual way. They make it rough. I don't know if it's on purpose, but they make it rough. They're not agreeable people. They're not team players, in other words. And when you're not a team player and you're ruled by manipulation, distrust, and you're also you're envious, that makes you very unpleasant and likely to do crappy things to other people. So I look at those 9 criteria and says that defines a person who's not going to hold emotional space for other people. They're going to be people who are very preoccupied with their own needs, which means they're going to run over other people's needs. Already I'm starting to define abuse, right? So how can you have MPD and not be abusive? I don't see it. How are you ruled by envy and not be an invalidating, minimizing person, right? I don't make the connection. So I'm not saying, Lou, that you're saying that or even that you mean that. You're just pointing out that there is a, how can we know much about narcissists because they don't come in for help? But I'm saying we can know by the aftermath, the volume of people injured tells us a lot. If you can't measure something directly, you can how do we know there's a black hole? We can't see a black hole, right? But we can measure the degree that's affecting everything around it. That's how we know about the power of a black hole, is by how it affects what it's around. I think we can do the same with narcissism. I think we can tell the power of narcissism by the effect that it's causing on all the lives around it. Great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate that. So here's another big question that's come up, and I'd like to tackle it. And it's going to be a long answer, I'm going to warn you. And that is, what about addictions and narcissism? Are addicts all narcissists? Are all narcissists addicts? Boy, do addicts look narcissistic. So does that mean they're narcissists? Great question. Love it. So my answer is coming out of the research that I did, or the studies that I had learned about when I had to continue education on opiate addictions. So this is the class I was in. It was 2 years ago. I had to do, for the state that I'm licensed in, I had to do this big study on the opioid epidemic. I had to do that. And so they were looking at the personalities of those who had an addiction, but it can be applied to not just opioids, it could be applied to any addiction. And yes, addictive behavior really looks ill. It's very narcissistic. It's very almost psychopathic. It's very in your face, and they break a lot of rules and very, very hurtful. The question is that a permanent condition? Were they like that? Is that why they got into the addiction? No, actually what they found was once these people began to heal and get treatment and really get onto the track of sobriety, that they actually, those qualities go away. Those qualities go away. That they actually return to their pre-morbid personality, what they were like. So narcissistic behavior when someone is in the throes of an addiction is related to the addiction. And you heal the addiction, you're going to see their personalities return to what it was before. But here's the other piece that makes it super complicated. There are narcissists as a whole struggle with excitement. There's a lot of like emptiness inside of them. There's not a lot of their ability to soothe themselves and regulate emotions and have purpose and intentionality. They struggle with that. If you, again, look at the alternative model of diagnosis for narcissism, you're going to see that they have a lot of problems with self-initiative. That's a very common problem with personality disorders. So what do you do when you're restless and you're in pain and you don't know what to do with yourself and you're not good at setting goals and you don't carry things out, you're not very determined and you don't see things through? Well, you do a lot of addictive behavior. So unfortunately, addiction is a common problem with a lot of narcissism. So you'll see that kind of co-occurring problem. It's not that addicts are narcissists, no. And it's not that because, so if you see someone who has an addiction, doesn't make them a narcissist. We don't know that. We only know that they have an addiction. We don't really know what unless you were able to interview the family from before, you don't really know what their pre-morbid condition was. But narcissists do, in general, that was a tongue tie, narcissists do in general have a lot of problems with self-regulation. And one of the ways that they tend to default into is using addiction as a way to do that. Is addiction a disease, or is that outdated information? I'm wondering. I'm not an addiction specialist, so I don't know what to say to that. I would have to do some research. It may be outdated. I don't know. I don't know what the current thinking is. That's the thing that's happening right now in the field of psychology. Because neurology, our ability to study the brain has never been better, and I still has a long ways to go, but it has never been better, and is because of that, all this information is exploding and becoming very highly sophisticated. That's why I'm very hesitant to speak about ADHD and other areas, is because I'm not up on the latest findings of neurology to be able to tell you all of these answers with confidence. And I don't like making theorizing and being outdated. I don't want to give you wrong information is really what I'm trying to say. So Joy, I don't know if it's strictly a disease or if it's behavior, or I don't know, but I do know that I do know, based on that continuing education information, which was coming out by American Psychological Association, sponsored that continuing education class that I took in 2021. And that was what I was learning in 2021. So maybe that's even outdated. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to jump back over to TikTok. I appreciate that. Razanan, you're telling it from the heart. Yeah, thank you for that. So here's another really good question, and we've gone long today. I will take 2 more questions and then I'll stop for today. But how do you manage when a narcissist starts displaying blame shifting and guilt attacks on you, and when you employ a boundary? This is a great question. This actually think of it like classical behavioral training. So what you're really seeing in this example is they have learned that if they push and whine and guilt and get shitty on you, that then you'll shift your boundaries. It's a change message. They're saying to you, I want you to change. Stop that. Don't do that to me. And then they employ all these mechanisms, these tactics, in order for you to change. And it works. So then they know that it works, and they'll do it again, and they'll do it again, and they'll do it again. So when you think of behavior this way, when you see something that's happening a lot, that means it's effective. Because if it wasn't effective, it wouldn't be happening. It would disappear. It would get extinguished. So how do you manage it? I'm going to give you some suggestions, but think of it this way. It works on you. So how do you, knowing who you are, how can you deal with it so that it doesn't work with you? I'll tell you, for me, because it works well on me too. So I'm right there with you. I have problems with that as well. I have to get to the place where I say mentally myself, it is anybody who has the bravery and the audacity to put me in that kind of spot and be willing to do that type of behavior and then see no responsibility doesn't deserve me being kind. They don't deserve niceness. I should hold, even if my boundaries are there to protect me and protect my peace and protect the family, it's there for good reasons. And so they're saying, no, you don't matter. Your boundaries don't matter. The peace in this family doesn't matter. That's ridiculous. But first off, it's just ridiculous. It does matter. And second of all, anybody who lacks the sensitivity, the emotional, the maturation to see the how idiotic that message is, doesn't deserve my generosity. That's what I say to myself. Because yes, I can say to myself, yes, do gray rock, but there's reasons why these things just don't work. Why, when we tell the public, just leave, just set better boundaries, just tell them to stop, just walk away. The reason it doesn't work is because it puts us in pain. It creates a conflict inside, and we don't like who we are and how we feel when we do those things. So it isn't just about like manning up and putting on bigger armor and wearing all this heavy kind of psychological stuff. It's learning how to see through it so that you can put it in a perspective that makes sense with you ethically. That's the problem. Your ethics is being attacked. You're being asked to violate who you are as a person. You're not a person who's unkind. You're not a person who leaves people hurting. You're a person who really likes people to be in a good space, for everyone to get along with each other. That's why this is effective. They're hitting at you at just the point that they know creates psychological pain and agony. And that's why you can't hold the boundary, is because it puts you in conflict with yourself. They're putting you in conflict with yourself. And it's hard to violate ourselves, to betray ourselves. That's why we don't do these things effectively. Yes, some of us don't know how. We don't give ourselves the permission to. But a lot of us do know how. A lot of us are doing good things. We say no to the extra cookie. We put a boundary around how much we spend at Christmas. We set our alarms and get up in the morning even when we don't want to. We know how to set boundaries. It's not that you don't know how. You're doing it all the time everywhere. But you don't do it here because of the conflict it puts you in. That's why you don't do it. So the way to solve it is you got to break the conflict. And the way I do it, and that's why I'm saying you're gonna have to listen to yourself and really identify what does it do to you? What do you feel like is wrong with you, or makes you awful, or makes you can't stand yourself when they put you in this position? And for me, I don't like to hurt anybody. That's my big thing. I don't like to see people in pain. So if I see a person in psychological pain, I'm likely to sacrifice myself in order to stop them hurting. To the point that I'm sacrificing myself. I use that word literally. I sacrifice myself. I just told you I'd walk on glass for you, that I'd walk across fire for you. I'm willing to put myself in pain in order to help you. But I have to remember, this person was not willing to sacrifice themselves for me. That they just hurt me. And that's what they're doing. They know they hurt me, but now they want me to relinquish what they did and not ask them to pay the consequences, when I just told you that I would be willing to pay the consequences for you. Do you see that? Do you see what I just said? I'm willing to pay the consequences for you to be healthier, but they did something wrong and they're not willing to pay the consequences for that, even let alone for my good. They're not going to do anything for my good. But they're not even willing to pay the consequences for their bad action. When I start to see it that way, then there's no internal conflict with me anymore. I got rid of it. I said, no, I'm sorry. This is the way it is. You decided to do that. I didn't make you do that. You did that on your own. and now you want not to have any consequences for it? Excuse me, no, there are consequences because I matter, and that was wrong. What you did was wrong. So I'm sorry, you don't want this to happen, then you stop doing it and it won't happen again. But you do it, this is what's going to happen. The choice is yours. You decide what you want. But I have nothing to do with it. I'm holding a boundary that is held that I hold myself to. Now, they will never. Here's another thing. We want them to have this epiphany, like, oh, yes, okay, suddenly everything makes sense. Yes, I will do that. No, that's not going to happen, guys. Not going to happen because I just told you that part of the brain is under functioning because they don't face themselves or face shame. No, that's not going to happen. But at least for yourself, you can understand why all the whining is happening and all the drama and all the pressure and all this stuff is happening. You can know that you didn't do it, that it isn't your fault. And you also know that when it comes to you and how you live your life, that's not the way you treat other people. And that, for me, that helps me. For me, that helps me. Great question. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity because, those 30-second videos, they just don't give you enough space to say all of this. This is way too difficult to unpack. And I really struggle with those who show. I had a woman, it happened this last week, get all up on me. She told me it was horrible. The troll, it was horrible. She told me to stop all this, and I was just trying to line my pockets and blah, on and on and on and on about why I don't just tell people to leave. I came back and gave her the research. I told her the books to read. I told her based upon spent too much time giving her information. She came back and seemed a little bit different, and then she said something else. I gave another kind of comment on it and blew back to how I just wanted to make money and it's not that hard and people could just make these changes and no, I know all of us are facing this. I know that. I know all of us see these people. And why? Why do they persist in that? I think a group of them is toxic. And they don't want to own responsibility for their own toxicity in the way that they're hurting other people. I think there's another section of the public who just doesn't like to see people hurt. And so they shut us down to stop the pain. Because if we stop talking about it, then we're not bothering their world or bothering the awareness that life isn't perfect and that people hurt each other. And I think then there's also a group of people who just don't understand that things are complicated. That are way more complicated than we wish. I really believe that. But it's painful. All right, TikTok. So I'm going to go over here and take the next question. This is my last question for today. Thank you for being here with me. Now, on Thursday, I'm going live at 12:30, not at 1, 12:30, and I'm going live with Catherine Klaus. So if any of you are familiar with Catherine, her handle is Stand Coaching. So Catherine and I are going to go live at 12:30, and I don't know how the format. I don't know if it's going to be more of an interview between us or how much questions we're going to take, but I hope you join us and talk to both of us. That would be awesome. Appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to run through here about TikTok and see what you guys have to say. Any questions for me? Yeah, thank you. It was kind of sometimes when I put things together, it's new for me too. So hearing all of this I needed to hear it too. I did need to really hear that as well. So that was a great question. Thank you for asking that. Yeah. Oh, so you guys keep talking about my looks. See, I've been ignoring the comments over here, guys. I hadn't seen them. All right. So who's my favorite resource for cluster B research? Yeah, I do have a mental health resource page, if you guys didn't know that. So if you go to the link in my bio, and I am going to be doing a new website. Right now, my website is crap, and I know that. Sorry about that. But I'm right now talking to somebody who's going to be a designer for it, and I've seen this person's work, so I'm super excited about that. But right now, the best place to go for my stuff to know resources is my Linktree or resource.carriemcavoyphd.com. Resource.carriemcavoyphd.com is where you can find out about the course, about the webinars, about where to get the workbook, of where to get my book. But the best place to find the whole variety of everything is the link in my bio, which is a Linktree link. And it will tell you about the group coaching, and it will tell you about the online course and the books and all, the Christmas packages that I've got available that I'll leave up until right after next week. But if you want to find the list of resources, then the best way for the books is at the bottom. It says mental health resources. Now, I'm rereading your question and realizing you're asking about research. I don't have a reference list of research. It's interesting. I do collect references on research, but I've never put them in one place. That's a great point. I will work on that this year. I will start to do that. And then create a file and connect it to that mental health resource page. Now, I say all of that, so it sounds awesome, but that's a lot of work. And it's going to take me some time to do that. So don't look for it today. Maybe in a week or two, I'll have it there. But I love that. That's a great suggestion, because there is really great research that's out there. And I do collect what I can when I do it. So thank you for that suggestion. I appreciate it. Any last questions for me over on TikTok before we wrap up? You guys just got to chatting because I was chatting for a long time. And thank you so much for my book, guys. I really, really appreciate that you guys getting my book, Love You More. Yeah, I surprised myself. I mean, yeah. Do you know how hard it is for a self-published author to sell a book? The average self-published author, for those of you who didn't know this, they sell 200 books in a life. In a whole lifetime of a book, 200 books. That's it. I released mine mid-February, and I've sold nearly 3,000 copies. Now, it takes 5,000 copies sold in a week in order for you to hit a best-selling list. So if I wanted to make U.S. News and Report or New York Times, and New York is very hard. It has a lot of criteria, so it would be very, very difficult for me to do that. I don't even know if it's possible for a self-published author to do it. I guess maybe some have done it, but it's really, really tricky. It's got certain metrics that are hard to do. But to make a general list, you have to sell 5,000 in a week across all platforms. That would be amazing. No, that didn't happen. But I sold 3,000 this last year, and I'm super excited about that. And it's largely because of you guys. So thank you so much for this. Thank you. Any last questions for me? Oh, yeah, Brittany, you did get a signed copy from me. And I have an audio, by the way. It's on. That's what I was looking. That was hard. I guess I'll end with this today. Doing that audio take, I read, first of all, I was only 2 weeks out from having total hip replacement. So I'm in the studio. It was very expensive to hire. I hired the best studio I could afford in Austin. And I'm in Austin, Texas. So there's a lot of great music studios. So this guy was a somebody in the business. He actually really knew what he was doing. And he had made a career out of being a speaker, an announcer. He was actually a big once upon a time in the music world. And so it was his studio that I used. He's the one that mastered it and did all of the editing and the video editing or the audio editing of it. And but I did the reading. I did my own narration, and I've never done narration before. And man, when I found out how hard it is hard work, guys. You can only tolerate doing a couple hours a day, and then you're wiped. You don't have a lot in you to be able to read for very long because it's a certain type of reading that you do. It's not a normal style of reading. But I got really scared how good it was going to be. And I just looked at my numbers on Audible, and it says experience, and then it says review of the work, of content. So in other words, performance? It evaluates the performance and the content. The performance I'm rating higher than the content. Yeah, I'm almost a five star on it was like 4.9 on the performance. So touches me deeply. Thank you so much for that. Really, thank you. Yeah, it was powerful. And some of those scenes was hard to read. It was really hard to share. But I wanted you guys to hear it from my own voice, that it was my story. So that was really cool to be able to have an opportunity to do that. All right. Well, I will be back on Thursday. Please, like I said, I started out kind of announcing all the changes that are coming up this year for this new year. I'm super excited about it. The name, Chris, of my book is Love You More. So I will be starting a new toxic love series on YouTube. I have an active YouTube page. I have also a podcast called Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. There's 2 slots left when I started this live for the group coaching that starts up a week from Saturday on January 7th. It's a 6-session commitment over 12 weeks, every other week on a Saturday for 75 minutes. It's live. It's a Zoom call that's live, and we teach skill building. So make sure you sign up for that. And if you want to get those ticket prices for Lundy Bancroft, please be sure to pick it up now because it's going to go up here after the new year. So right now it's as cheap as it's going to be. It's an early bird. So make sure you get your tickets. And have a great day. I'll see you back on Thursday with Catherine. All right, you take care. Bye-bye.